Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, my dear brothers, sisters, friends and the foes out there, and welcome to another episode of the Blood Brothers podcast with your host, Dilly Hussain. Before I introduce today's guest, I want to remind all the avid podcast listeners that you can find this show and all 4 seasons on all the major audio platforms. And if you're tuning in via YouTube, don't be cheeky. Do remember to click subscribe to the 5 Pillars YouTube channel. Today is a truly special moment for me. I've been really excited to have today's guest on, honoured. Today I'm joined by the former Minister of South Africa of International Relations and Cooperation, the former MP for the ANC, the esteemed and the erudite Naledi Pandor. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
How are you?
Alhamdulillah, how are you?
I'm very well. I'm honoured to have you on.
Thank you.
How's life been since leaving office?
Very busy.
Really?
I'm retired, but no one is allowing me to retire. Since the first day I left, I've been traveling, participating in conferences, preparing papers. I've even started writing a memoir of my early years as a child in exile. Not getting very far because of the schedule. Mm-hmm. So it's been really busy.
It seems like are you enjoying being busy?
I'm a hard worker. I'm used to working hard. Okay. I think initially when I retired, I was really worried that I'm going to be bored. And so when I got invitations, I tended to accept all of them. I'm now regretting it because some ran into 2025. So I've become a bit more selective and sensible, having experienced the first 8 months.
We've got a fair amount to go through, but let's start by the most trending discussion in South Africa and beyond, and that is President Cyril Ramaphosa's recent meeting with President Trump in the Oval Room. Now, some have described it as a ritual humiliation. Others have been a bit more optimistic. But specifically, what are your thoughts in the way the allegations of a white genocide was posited to him with the whole newspaper articles and, questioning him about the bodies of the farmers that were killed and the news articles? Did you see the interaction, and what are your thoughts on that specific allegation of white genocide?
Well, of course, as a South African and a former member of government, I was interested in observing what would happen. And I knew that the president would have prepared very well because he is that type of person. I think this ritual of attempted humiliation, because I don't think our president was humiliated. I think there was a real attempt at it, as always. Mm-hmm. It's the worst form of hospitality because as Africans, we don't treat guests in that way. So for us, this is just a sign of really bad manners. Mm-hmm. And it's something, we wouldn't do. As to the allegations of white genocide, I think many of us today know what a genocide looks like.
Indeed.
And there is no way in which anyone would claim that South Africa has a genocide by black people against white citizens of our country, particularly white farmers. There are black farmers who are killed. There are white farmers who are killed. Many South Africans are murdered. We've got a crime problem, mm-hmm. as was said very clearly in that meeting. But to claim that there's a genocide is the height of dishonesty and obfuscation. I suspect that this is part of an agenda that seeks to almost create a sense of fear among white people, both in our country, but in the United States of America as well. And so allow for the embrace of notions of racism, mm-hmm. of exclusion, mm-hmm. and discrimination against others who do not look like you. We in South Africa, fortunately, we won't accept that. But all this misrepresentation that has been led by some South Africans, even organizations that claim to be pursuing civil rights, but are actually pursuing a conservative right-wing agenda, they are not believed by the majority of South Africans, and their lies about our country have been rejected by the broadest majority possible even from the community they claim to represent. So, in my view, I wasn't surprised at the attempt to, humiliate South Africa, but it wasn't successful. I believe our president comported himself well. I just wish there had been an opportunity where the statistics could have been presented.
So
it may have happened in the closed room, but I wish it could have been done there. And so I do think on that score that South Africa must make public some of these figures.
So let's talk about some of the statistics that are available. The New York Times reported that 225 people were killed on South African farms over a 4-year period ending in 2024. Of those deaths, 101 were black current or former workers living on farms, and 53 were farmers who are usually white. Whilst every life is sacred, I don't know if this warrants the definition of a genocide.
Well, it certainly doesn't. We regret all killing and all death. But, there's no way that there's a genocide in South Africa. This is ridiculous. The CIA knows it. All intelligence forces in the West would know it, because should we have acted in that way, they would have been the first to report on it. And I think Europeans would never have allowed us to carry out this so-called genocide, because they're very good at protecting their own.
So let's talk about how this allegation, this really dangerous allegation, actually has led to a global public opinion, even amongst the right in Europe. There was a point for, I would say, at least 6 to 8 weeks where even I would log on to X and I would see on my newsfeed Julius Malima's, kill the Boer, kill the Boer. And no doubt, I feel at least, that maybe Mr. Elon Musk had tweaked the algorithm whereby it was being amplified and magnified to at least give this false perception that such a thing was happening. Do you think that Elon Musk potentially played a role in this to amplify and magnify it?
Well, I don't know about Elon Musk specifically, but I do think artificial intelligence is being used to amplify and to combat South Africa. I think, South Africa is a country in Africa that is trying to build a progressive democracy, that is bold on human rights, that aspires for international cooperation. So it holds all the values that many leaders in the world do not support. And it stands as a vanguard for progressive thought. So I think there is a real attempt, to tell these cheeky Africans that we're going to use every tool in our power to cast you in the worst light possible and to make you appear to the world as barbaric, because you've really reached far beyond the height that you should. So this is really, for me, an attempt to downplay the very positive role that South Africa plays in global affairs.
The amplification, I don't want to spend too much time on it because I don't want to give something that's untrue this much attention, but I think it warrants it because of it's now on a global stage. It happened in the center of global power. And the way that it's been amplified is truly problematic. And also the fact that the Trump administration has opened up those who want to leave South Africa. I think 49 white South Africans have left. That's something which the president had addressed. What would your comments be to any white Afrikaans who are considering leaving South Africa for the US? What would you say to them?
The weather's awful. You're not going to enjoy the services that you have in our country. You'll be in a very difficult context. And the other man's grass always looks greener, but it isn't. I think Afrikaners have a wonderful place in our country because we achieved freedom on the basis that we will not pursue retribution. We achieved freedom promoting the notion of unity and diversity, that through the many different groupings that make up our country, we will ensure through a properly crafted Bill of Rights that all of us have a right to our culture, our religion, our expression, our language, and that we will, with that mix, allow diversity to be a source of unity. Not many countries aspire to such high-level values. And so to go to a country where you have shootings every few months of children in school, I think it's a dangerous place to take your children to. I'd far rather have my children in schools that are safe, in a country where gun-toting children don't go around committing mass murder. So I would think twice.
Now let's talk about the real genocide. 19 months of Israel's brutal genocidal war crimes in Gaza. More than 62,000 have been killed. The vast majority children and women, innocent men. More than 90% of Gaza is in decimation. And here we are still talking and discussing, and others are still justifying and defending. What are your thoughts on the recent shift or pivot in rhetoric from the UK, France and Canada with regards to criticising the ongoing genocide? Where do you think that's come from? Most would say it's quite frankly too little too late. And secondly, the weapons are still being sold. The trade is still ongoing on. So what is this other than rhetoric, which is too little too late? What do you think the pivot in rhetoric is based upon?
I would believe it's genuine if I saw soldiers from Canada, UK and the other countries that were part of the statement on the ground in Gaza, ensuring that aid gets in and the people of Palestine have food. Because that's the critical issue now. And I believe they could do it. They have the power to do it. I don't think Israel's soldiers would shoot their soldiers. So I believe that they have to do far more than make a statement that we've been making for a very long time, that this has to come to an end. So I welcome the slight change, but for me it's rhetoric. Real action would be committing their defense forces to go and protect the innocent in Palestine.
How likely do you think that is?
Well, it's what should happen. I mean, if we believe in the fact that civilians should not become the victim of a conflict in which they had no role, then international law mandates that the Security Council should provide the means to protect the innocent.
The ICJ case led and submitted by South Africa for allegation of genocide against Israel, it seems for some, it happened a long time ago. For our viewers and listeners, what is the current status of that application? Is it still a case that evidence is being gathered? How long, what is the time frame and timeline with the nature of these cases?
Evidence continues to be gathered, but we have made our major submission as South Africa, the government of South Africa. It's a government-led process, and they've submitted their papers for the hearings that should be set in motion by the court. There isn't a date as yet. These processes do take long, far too long in my view. This is why, as South Africa, we have been arguing for many years for a reform of the United Nations and a relook in particular at the role and function of the UN Security Council. Because if it were more nimble, if it were more dedicated to peace and security and less to veto in own interest, we would, I think, have more efficient responses. The courts would decide faster. But I do want to say to those who express concern, that we're taking long, is this worth it, and so on. Firstly, we've put Israel in the international court. They are going to have to answer. Their answers may be inadequate, but they're before the public, and they're having to answer. And we know what's happening. evidence is being gathered by individuals on the ground, by non-governmental organizations, by lawyers working in the area, and all of this is being submitted and will be provided. So there's a body, and this is one of the benefits of information technology, of the social media, of electronic means, that you are able to gather evidence, collate it, and provide it to those who are preparing the case. So I think the body of evidence is going to be the first real detailed exposure of the murderous cruelty of the Israeli state. And it's vital that we put this before the world, because since the Nuremberg trials, we haven't really exposed in modernity cruel practices of this kind. And I think it's time that happened. So we should be impatient, but we shouldn't disregard this very important part of what should be really a range of strategic interventions. Because I don't think it's the ICJ alone. There's also the ICC, but there are also the activism that we all should be part of. There's international solidarity. So there are a range of actions that in some could actually be a significant force for real change and for real impact. But we've got to draw all these together. And I sometimes worry that there are many efforts, but they're dissipated. There isn't a connecting element to what is being done at the moment. And so we do need a global South movement that can help ensure that we draw all of these together and really make a significant push that will alter the way that we see peace and security.
What would you say to the cynics and the critics who have lost trust and belief in a international laws-based system, whereby, as an example, if this had been Russia, we did see how it was with Russia, that because it's Israel, a staunch civilization and ally of Western countries that continue to arm and fund it, that quite frankly, 19-20 months in, whilst for sure there is protests and solidarity and boycotting and divestment and all types of efforts taking place around the world, but people have just lost faith. They just don't trust the international law, which many Western governments claim to champion. And had there been any genuine, willpower to hold Israel to account, then quite frankly, things would have been done quicker. What would you say to those who have either lost belief in the international law, whether it's the ICJ or ICC, and those who basically say because it's Israel, that's why it's taking time, that's why things are being delayed? Had this been another country that didn't fall within the sphere of the West, right, things would have been done much quicker in a far more forceful way. What would you say to those?
I think we should be careful about defining international law as being the property of the West, because it means we're saying all humane values are owned by those who committed the worst atrocities in the world. They're not. They have been exercising international law with a huge double standard. There hasn't been a balanced approach to international law. And these are very powerful countries. And to a great degree, we in the developing world haven't used our voting power, haven't used our powerful voice, haven't used our majority sufficiently to be of influence and impact. So I think international law is very, very important. I also think the United Nations is important because we shouldn't undermine it. It has played a critical role in supporting migrants, in the work done by WHO. That's why UN is also a target, by the way.
Yep.
It wouldn't be a target if it was absolutely incompetent, useless, and of no force and effect. So we should be careful that the target is the right target. And the target is the abuse of international law, not international law, it's abuse. the practice which sees international law as not equally enjoyed by everybody, but enjoyed by those favored by Europe or the United States. This is what we have to change. It is important that we have sovereign frameworks that all of us attach to, that deal with us as sovereign nations of the world. If we lost that, then it means we have different kinds of international law. There'll be one where we respect women and another where women are not respected. That would be crazy. So we do need a universal set of frameworks. So I think we should be, measured and balanced in our approach. Now, on those who feel despair, I feel that despair myself. I am an individual by virtue of the ICJ case and the role I had in South Africa's government. I've become a sort of spokesperson for the people of Palestine, like a lobbyist. Everybody wants me to talk about Palestine, and I feel embarrassed because so many people have lost their lives. I almost feel ashamed that I'm talking when they're dying, and I wish it was them speaking, and I've said this to some of my Palestinian colleagues, and they say, no, you must keep talking. So we have to keep on. But to those who, feel they're despairing, they feel pessimistic, etc., let me remind them, I come from a tradition of struggle for freedom. My grandfather, my father, myself, we were all in the struggle. Now, after 3 generations, it was this third one that got freedom. Imagine if my grandfather had said, we give up, we'll just be slaves to the whites, we'll allow ourselves to be treated this way because it's too hard to fight. No. What was our parents' slogan? Freedom in our lifetime. We have to continue to believe that it's possible. And as I said, what we must strengthen is our strategic activism. Our strategy and tactics need attention. Our organizational form needs attention. Our collaboration globally needs work. But we do have levers, and there's no time to be pessimistic. We've just got to say, let's organize better. Let us do those things that will have impact. Let's focus on the defense industry. Let's be at their gates. Let's get the trade unions not to move goods. Let's talk to sectors. Let's de-bureaucratize the trade unions because they've become huge bureaucrats, not activists, which is what they were established to be. Let's go to NGOs. Let's go to women in the factories. Let's go to those women in the supermarkets who said we won't touch South African goods. Let's revive those strategies that we used against apartheid. Let's go back to the UN and form the UN committee against apartheid Israel. There's no time to be pessimistic. I don't believe in it because we lived through a struggle and our parents never said, we cower, we give up, no.
When we see that in the case of Britain, hundreds, if not thousands, of British dual nationals going over to Israel, participating in potentially war crimes. Some of them even filmed it. They are returning. There's no prosecution. The same can be said for many countries in Europe, in Canada, in the US, and South Africa. Perhaps less so in numbers, but nevertheless it's happening. Dual nationals going and fighting for the IDF, participating in what we believe is a genocide or a plausible genocide, if you still believe that after 19 months. You once said, and please do forgive me if I misquote or misrepresent you, is that if any South Africans who have gone over to fight for the IDF come back and are proven to have committed war crimes or participated in war crimes, they should be arrested and prosecuted. Are you still of that position?
Yes, absolutely. This is our law. We actually have a law which prohibits South Africans from engaging in a war that has nothing to do with us.
Even dual nationals?
Yes, anyone. It's a clear law, so we must implement it. And our National Prosecuting Authority should arrest those people who've participated in this cruel genocide against Palestinian people. Australia has done it. They were sentenced yesterday, a number of soldiers.
Yeah.
So the Commonwealth needs to lead on this. And I think, again, as organs of civil society, we should be, continually speaking up on this. But also, it comes back to, this thing I keep raising of organizing. In South Africa, they used to have conscription for white young men. And we engaged in a very, very successful end conscription campaign. We failed with that golfer who talked all the rubbish.
Please help us.
In that,
and help us like he helped us in Angola.
Yeah, really. I mean, where's he from? So we had an end conscription campaign, and we persuaded many young white citizens not to join up in the army. We need that. We should be talking, because one of the things we've discovered is that in schools that are organized and supported by the Jewish Board of Deputies in our country and the boards elsewhere, there's huge indoctrination. The young people are taught hatred, real hatred, and we have to talk to them, and you get them when they're young on university campuses. But also what's wonderful is that there's a significant and growing Jews for Palestine in South Africa. And we're working together with the ANC, with them and other organizations. And we must support that, So part of what we need to do as we struggle for justice and freedom for the people of Palestine, we also must make Jewish people understand that this is not a religious struggle, it's one of human rights. We're not anti-Jewish, we are pro-Palestinian people's freedom and end of occupation. And they must enjoy full access to human rights and justice, just as all free people do. So there's work that we can do to make it offensive for one to actually be on the side of wrong. And it's through interaction, through engagement, through working with organizations you may not speak to always, through encouraging interfaith movements and meetings, you can begin to address mindsets and have young people and even parents begin to say, why are we actually doing this?
Brothers and sisters and friends, I see that you're enjoying the content. How come you've not clicked subscribe to the 5 Pillars YouTube channel? And if you're watching via Rumble, how come you've not subscribed on our Rumble channel? If you like the content, you like the guests, you like what we're talking about, it's absolutely inexcusable and cheeky for you not to click subscribe. Thank you and Jazakallah khair.
When you transition, and I'm asking you from your personal experience from the days of apartheid, and when you transition from a kind of liberation resistance movement to a democratic government, is it the case that you kind of have to not disbelieve, but you have to kind of let go of sometimes the language and the framing of things? For example, do you believe Zionism as an ideology is a problem? Or is it the case when you become a statesman and a politician that you kind of have to steer away from that type of framing?
I think Zionism within it has very strong elements of racism and prejudice. And so, yes, for me it is a problem. But if one is practicing their particular faith, that's a different matter.
Of course.
But if the basis of that practice is hatred of others, then that's a problem. So I do think Zionism is a racial definition of the practice of the Jewish faith, and has within it significant hatred, particularly of Muslims and of Arab people.
Do you believe that Israel is the last colonial outpost of the West?
Not sure, because we've got Sahrawi as a country that is for us still under colonial occupation, and we would like to see that part of Africa free as well.
Sure.
So there are elements in the world, and of course neocolonialism exists in a range of different forms, hence the resistance you're beginning to see in parts of West Africa. But I do believe that Israel is a creation of the West, and I think the United Kingdom has a particular role and responsibility. And I'm really glad, I must say, that there are MPs in the Labour caucus who have begun to be very active, to speak up, and who are, I think, part of the shift that you're beginning to see, and we should encourage that.
Now, this is a Muslim platform, it's a Muslim channel. The vast majority of our viewers and listeners are Muslim, and one of the overt and unequivocal frustrations has been the silence, the treachery, the complicity, the inaction of the neighbouring Arab Muslim nations. In fact, there was a soundbite of yours that went viral around a year ago, where you were kind of just highlighting that what are the Arab Muslim nations doing? And I guess that's been one of the biggest frustrations of the global ummah, that it's not that we're short of military personnel. We're not actually, in fact, the Arab nations can do a lot without firing a single bullet. Why is it, from your perspective, do you believe that there's a spectrum of it? There's inaction, I believe, cowardice, to the other spectrum, which is complicity, whether that be nations allowing gas to go through. Let's not mention names of the states, people can work out for themselves, allowing gas to go through to Israel. Others are allowing food stocks to feed the IDF soldiers through their borders. Others are allowing it to fly over their airspace. Some are even sharing intelligence. There's a spectrum of inaction. What are your thoughts on this, and why do you think?
I'm going to answer your question indirectly. You know why?
Go on.
Because I'm no longer in government.
Sure.
And South Africa needs to maintain friends.
Of course.
And I don't want to be the cause of them losing friends.
No, we don't want.
So I'm not going to answer you directly, but let me answer you like this. When we were struggling against apartheid, our neighbors were with us. Had they not been, I don't think we would have made the progress that we did. They gave us refuge, they gave support, they risked their own civilian population, they were bombed, murdered, but they were firm that apartheid must come to an end and the black people of South Africa must be free. Mm-hmm. Had it not been our neighbors, we wouldn't have gone as far as we did. Countries on the African continent, through the Organization of African Unity, were clear. You have a passport with an apartheid South Africa stamp in it, you're not coming in. There were one or two that didn't hold the line, but in the majority they did. So I am disappointed that there isn't this level of responsiveness. I think there could be without any danger, because the SADC countries and Boleswa here that supported us, they didn't have oil, they don't have gas, they didn't have mineral riches. These were poor neighbors that relied actually on apartheid South Africa for the movement of exports and imports, So I am disappointed, and I do believe a great deal could be done. And I think it wouldn't take, going to arms or a massive, support for a guerrilla movement. I think it would just be our embassy. There would be no representation. There will be no engagement unless resettlement stops. If there is any denial of access to humanitarian aid, we will take action on trade matters. The steps would not even be so injurious, but they'd send a signal that we are with you, the people of Palestine. Now, for your neighbors to host a leader that is arming the country that is murdering the people in Gaza and the West Bank, and that person makes speeches, you respond, and not once do you hear the word Palestine mentioned. Mm-hmm. Your heart gets sore, you wonder, what kind of leaders are these? So I do think there's much that could be done, as was done in Africa and Southern Africa. And I will never forget the leaders then on the African continent who took resolution after resolution and who stood steadfast in support of our struggle for liberation.
Bringing the podcast to an end or to a close, let's look at things at home. Some analysts have suggested that, based on the last election, the ANC took some hits in terms of votes, and that the next election there could be more of that. Do you believe that that is a plausible trajectory? And if it is, I know it's hard. What I'm asking you. I'm essentially asking you why your political party or who you've, are potentially losing support. If there is any truth to that, why do you believe that to be the case?
I think there are many complex reasons. The ANC did lose support. I think the inefficiency of the public administration has been a real problem, and the ANC has not been able to get it right in all sectors. I think a second is the corruption that we've had in the 30 years of democracy, where a lot of public resources have been stolen, with some politicians benefiting from this theft and public servants as well.
Through tenders
and this has hugely disappointed our population and indicated to them a loss of key principles in the ANC, of service to the people, of being close, to the ground, of being responsive. People feel that the political leaders have begun to be very distant and more interested in their own advancement as wealthy individuals rather than in changing and transforming our country. This is hugely worrying for the ANC. I know that the leadership is trying to steer the party back to its roots, but the renewal process is proving to be difficult. It is happening, but not as much as one would want to see it. But what is great is people are being arrested for corrupt practices, and I believe they will be imprisoned. So action is being taken, and Cyril Ramaphosa has been very courageous in being ready publicly to take those practical actions. But the ANC's got a lot of work to do. It went to just a little above 40% in the last election. Still very big gap between them and the next party.
Of course.
But it was not a majority, and that's a real problem. I think what they should do now is they should be on the ground, getting closer to the people. They must address these public service issues. The roads are horrible. We're not getting quality education. Kids are in school, it's great, but what they're getting out in terms of learning is a real problem. They must ensure that the priorities that the president announces to the nation are acted upon. I think sometimes we try to do too many priorities, and that causes us to not succeed. So we need to really, in my view, come at it like a research institution. I've been arguing that we should use our universities better. We have excellent institutions. We should use their research capacity and understand. I want to build 300,000 houses in the next 5 years. Why am I not doing it? Or how do I do it in a labor-intensive manner that creates employment? Young people are unemployed. How do I, resolve this? So I think we should be treating transformation in South Africa as a deeply complex research question and using the best minds to help us answer those questions.
How significant has been the break-off and formation of different political parties from the ANC, whether it's the EFF, MK party? So how significant have the formation of those parties been to the loss of support of the ANC?
I think the MK party did cause a big decline. They took up quite a lot of our base. EFF, I think, less successful. Their rhetoric sometimes works against them. They think it's populist and good, but our public tend to prefer a bit more moderation and maturity. But MK did make a dent because Jacob Zuma remains, hugely popular because he's able to create, this notion of an identity that reflects the grassroots, that I'm close to you. He sings all the struggle songs, so he's got that persona that people feel they can identify with. But I think they're beginning to see through the cracks, and I'm hoping that the ANC continues to admit that it has made huge missteps, but that it is possible to retrieve the support of our people.
Do you think there's any possibility whatsoever to perhaps win back those who are currently supportive or sympathetic to MK or EFF? Because ultimately they're a branch of ANC that broke away for various reasons. Is there any possibility of winning the supporters back or reuniting with these folk?
Well, I think through work, you've got to be on the ground. You must, work at convincing people. You should honestly assess where you went wrong. At times, we put really poor and bad candidates up, especially at the local government level, and communities got angry. We had some people who were crooks that we put up as candidate for councillor, and then they won because we continued to enjoy support. But they didn't service the community. The community got angry. You then got independent candidates, MK and others came in. So we've got to change those practices, and really look at ourselves, which President Ramaphosa has been trying to get the ANC leadership to do. And I think, slowly but surely, they will grow. But the odds are tough. The economy is a big problem. There's huge structural change that needs to happen. We have really bad performance by the state-owned corporations, and they provide, a lot of the basics, electricity, water, etc. They're huge, but badly managed. We've turned around somewhat the electricity one, but the water ones are now proving to be a problem on logistics, our logistics corporation. So you have to ask, should we continue to have such majority state ownership, of these institutions, or should they be managed differently? So all of those things, in sum, pose, a real challenge for the ANC. And finally, we won a political struggle. We haven't got economic power yet. So we've got to do better at empowering black people to own businesses, to generate income and so on. So it's transformation is a deeply complex project. And I think transition doesn't happen in 30 years. I think it takes much longer. And we often don't say that, to our people, because as leaders, you can't say to people, wait. You have to say, I'm going to do this, that.
For sure. Yeah. Can that plausibly happen, considering that the concentration of wealth still remains within the white Afrikaans, whether it's the farmlands, whether it's other industries, and 30 years on, some would argue that, yes, a handful from the ANC or some black politicians or investors might have benefited, but ultimately the concentration of wealth still remains amongst those who are ultimately the ones who we struggled against. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think, the ANC realized after a few years that this black economic empowerment, the way it was initially implemented, wasn't working. And so they developed a new policy called Triple BEE, which is broad-based black economic empowerment. And that was to pursue empowerment in a manner where it's not an individual who gets 50% share in a big white corporation, but it's communities, it's a larger set of individuals who are black and so on. But again, failure of execution. So on the policy side, we've got the right frameworks. But beyond statute, our execution is really inadequate. I think we have to look much more at sectors that can generate business opportunity and growth. One of them for me is agriculture.
Sure.
Black people should have access to land, but it's not just land, it's support to make that land productive. So you need to be resolute if you want to achieve that. Then you don't get success, and this is the structural issue, through only having big corporates. You must build a small and medium-sized sector. We don't have enough of that. We need to actively pursue small and medium-sized growth.
Finally, is there a possibility of the resurgence of a pro-Apartheid, pro-Israeli leadership, or like a significant stakeholder within the coalition? Is there a genuine fear of that? I know the disparity between the 40% or so from the last elections and the main opposition party, which I believe is the Democratic Alliance. Can that gap become closer and their share of votes and their position in the coalition become more significant? Is there a genuine fear of that resurgence?
I don't see the fear, but the possibility exists if we don't do our political work. But we have sufficient awareness and support for Palestine in the broader membership of the African National Congress to make it implausible that we could become a Zionist, strong partner. There's a partnership of convenience because of the outcome of the elections. It's a government of national unity, not a coalition, although it's a quasi-coalition in my view. But there's no way that the ANC can, detach itself from resolutions of the members, because the members are the deciding factor. And when you go to an ANC conference, the members will tell you, every conference there's a resolution on Palestine, and it's clear. And this is why, up to this point, in terms of the public, there hasn't been a rejection of what we've done. Last night I was on a podcast, and the gentleman who hosts it was telling me that in the social media, people are saying the person who caused all these problems is Naledi Pandor. And I was saying to him, no, it's South Africa, because South Africans believe in solidarity. It's just part of our makeup, given who we are. So in the main, and I've not come across a situation in which African people say to me, why did you support going to the ICJ, and why were you the face? They say, you restored our dignity. We had lost dignity in terms of moral, global leadership. You've restored it. And it is largely the black majority that expresses that view, but it's across, interestingly enough, ages and racial grouping. Even this morning, I spoke at a very large school assembly celebrating Africa Day. And the person doing the question and answer afterwards ended the session by saying, what you did made me proud to be a South African. And I think in the main, that's how South Africans feel, because they're a good people. Their struggle history makes them a nation that is, for me, very interesting in terms of its attitude to moral, positive values. And by moral, I add positive, because sometimes moral can be a problem. So positive moral values support in South Africa is something, that our people just have as part of their DNA. And this is why I have such great faith in them and their potential role in building a good world.
Only because you mentioned it, and I promise this is the last question, and it's linked to what you said. Because of the association, the synonymity of yourself as and the ICJ application, whilst you have articulated that you've received widespread thanks and gratitude and restoring pride and honor within South Africa for that application, have you also experienced pressure, attacks, blame, the other side of it? Has it impacted you personally? And I know whilst a genocide is happening, no one wants to make themselves the center of it.
I mean,
but we're all human beings, Sister Naledi. We are human beings. And so how have you experienced any of that?
No. I've had threats. There are articles written about me almost every month. The Zionist organizations have a monthly publication called Jewish Report, and they write about me. Every month I'm a thief because I go to Iran to get money for ANC.
Have you?
Never.
Okay.
Never. I've been to Iran, but I've never had the pleasure of being given money for anyone because I'm not a treasurer of the ANC. I'm the representative office of Hamas in South Africa. I'm anti-Semitic, which is absolute nonsense.
That's a standard line.
And my children benefit from government contracts because of me. My kids have no government contract. So every time my husband is the evil force behind me. It's done on a regular basis. They even have have meetings. He sent me a recording of one where, gosh, the way the gentleman was talking about me, I didn't recognize this person. But
is there a case of sticks and stones?
I've said that insults are the last refuge of a scoundrel. That's what I learned in class at school. And so I just keep repeating it. And I don't join them in insulting them. I don't think it's useful. I make it clear that our purpose is freedom and justice for the people of Palestine. And of course, peace and security for Israelis as well, because it's a reality that has to be dealt with. But the key concern are the Palestinian people who are suffering oppression. So you can insult, sometimes I'm walking because I travel alone. You don't have support when you're an ex-cabinet minister. So people say, oh, you must be careful, So I tell them, you know what? We don't choose our moments. Allah knows. So I do my stuff, carry on with it. If it happens, well, you get that. I feel sorry for my children, though. I think it's unfair on them because, they really have had no part in it. But they've accepted that it's going to happen to us.
May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for you and your family, Ameen, and accept your efforts, Ameen. It was truly an honor to have you on.
Thank you.
And I look forward to seeing you again in South Africa, inshallah.
Inshallah. Thank you.
Brothers, sisters and friends, I hope you all thoroughly enjoyed today's episode as much as I did. Please do remember that you can find this episode and all 4 seasons on all the major audio platforms. And if you're tuning in via YouTube, don't be cheeky. Do remember to click subscribe to the 5 Pillars YouTube channel. Until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.